you said that it's a red line to have the Secure the Border Act, but the administration already said the president vetoed that when it was included with the defense appropriations request last month. Do you have any comment on that?
It was included in the CR, if you recall. So that can be his position. Is that still going to be his position when it's attached with Ukraine aid? You know, it, look, Republicans who don't want Ukraine aid are going to have to answer the question: do you want Russia to win more than you want the border secure? And then President Biden is going to have to ask: do you care more about Ukraine's border than you care about our border? The American people actually are in lockstep on this. You know, the American people, 90-10, want a secure border. They're actually like 50-50 on Ukraine aid. So if the president is not going to play ball with us on the border, he is not in lockstep with the American people and what their priorities are. This is a win-win situation if we want it to be.
Mr. Crenshaw, at the beginning you said you think that the majority of the Republican conference supports all three of those issues that you discussed. The last standalone vote on Ukraine aid, though, in the House saw a majority of the conference vote against adding it back to the state foreign ops bill. So why do you feel that way?
Well, you're going to get a lot of Republicans lost if it's just Ukraine aid. So that's the kind of vote you're talking about. But if it's if it's meaningful border security in addition to that, that's how you're going to get them on board.
So what do you see as the ratio? I mean, where's the majority of the Republican conference on Ukraine as an issue right now?
I mean, it's diminishing. That's why we're doing this. And I don't have the exact numbers for you. I'm not a whip, but there's a majority who still support it. That being said, there's questions. I mean, my friend Mike Garcia here, we support it, but we have questions. We don't like the way it's being done. So it's a little bit more nuanced than do you support it or do you not support it. There's different categories of people. But again, if we get meaningful border security out of it and we right-size the Ukraine aid, I think it's a pretty tough. It's going to be pretty tough to vote against that because our border matters that much more.
Does it bother you that so many of your fellow Republicans are resistant to Ukraine aid? I mean, you're kind of packaging it with something that they would really like, so that they would accept it, which suggests you can't actually persuade them on the merits. Is that accurate?
Some, right? There's different categories of people. Okay, there's some who are just like as Mike outlines, never again support Ukraine. They don't understand the strategic importance of that, and I can talk for hours trying to help them understand. It's not really about Ukraine, it's about Russia, and it's about stopping a world that we used to live in prior to World War II, where countries just invaded other countries and caused global chaos. Nobody really remembers that world. And that was the world humans lived in for thousands of years. It was a world of survival, not of flourishing. I don't want to live in that world. And the only way that world comes back is if America pulls back. So that's the grand understanding of why we do what we do, why we support allies. Some people don't understand that. That's okay. I'll continue to try and convince them. Does it concern me? Yes, it concerns me. But it also concerns me that the administration is not committed to this war correctly, and for all the reasons that Mike outlined. So there's a nuanced positions in between.
And how big a deal is it to you to have a speaker in this election who feels similarly with you guys about helping Ukraine and pushing back against Russia?
All the speaker candidates I've talked to agree wholeheartedly with this plan. It's going to be border and Ukraine tied together. Because strategically and politically, that is the only vehicle for border security. If there's any Republican who thinks they're getting meaningful border security through the appropriations process, I'll say some beachfront property in Nebraska, it hasn't happened ever. We've been talking about it forever. It didn't happen when we had the Senate and White House. This is the deal. This is the deal. They want Ukraine aid bad enough. We're getting border security with it. And you know what? I think they want border security too. They just want to blame us for it. So this is the time. We all need to get on board with that plan.
Congressman, what speaker candidates have you talked to, and what assurances have they made you that they would put a package with Ukraine funding on the floor?
I'm not going to give you specifics about what they've said. I think they'll talk about that in the forum right now. But everyone I've talked to, look, this was Speaker McCarthy's plan before the vacation. Even Jim Jordan was talking about this and tying these together when he was running. This is not a controversial idea. I'm not sure anyone has a different plan at this point. You might have heard some say that all of this stuff needs to be separated. I think that's crazy. That means you definitely never get border security. That's what that would mean. I'm not sure some Republicans understand that.
Is that clear to the conference that these need to travel together?
I'm doing this to make that clear. Now, I will say this: the Israel aid, it's more non-controversial. To me, that's neutral, whether you put it in this package or not. The real discussion here is connecting the border with Ukraine aid. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, is there a single candidate in particular that you think would be the best to execute this agenda?
I'm about to go to the forum and hear him speak. I mean, I do have some ideas. I'm not ready to say it right now.
Maybe I can add just, I think the vast majority of our conference wants Russia to lose. They want Ukraine to win. They want to cut spending, and they want to make sure that our border is secure, right? That's the common denominator of what we're proposing here. You saw 117 people vote in our conference against what was about a $300 million aid package to Ukraine a couple of weeks ago. And you can imagine what that number looks like when we're talking about $61 billion. It's not that they don't want Russia to lose, and it's not that they don't want Ukraine to prevail. It's that they seek clarity, they seek transparency, they seek accountability, and they want to know that the money that we're spending in a time when we have $33 trillion in debt and massive deficit spending on an annual basis is actually going to pay for a victory and not guarantee a dependency on American taxpayers that ends in a stalemate. And that's what we need the answers to. That's why we are asking these questions, so that we can get to a position where we have confidence that what we are providing is a lifeline to a victory and ultimately to a defeat of Russia, okay? That is a common denominator across, I would say, 98% of our conference and across the aisle as well. So, and I would say that close to 100% of every member of Congress on both sides of the aisle want a secure border. Some are a little more squeamish in public to say that, but we recognize that this is the biggest threat to our nation's security right now. So the coupling of these two things is actually very important, and to right-size the Ukraine investment, and for folks like us to go do our due diligence to make sure that we're not doing more than what's necessary or spending money on humanitarian aid when that should be the role of the EU is the point of all this. And I think that's going to be consistent with every candidate that we hear speak tonight for the speaker's race.
Just have a quick comment about that as well. You know, we need to remember that Putin is an aggressor. He is a thug, and Russia is still our enemy, and the Ukrainians have been fighting that fight. I agree wholeheartedly with the sentiments of my colleagues, but that is our job right now, is to make sure we educate the rest of our conference, the rest of Congress, on why it's important that we have some level of involvement there. If Putin was to be successful with Ukraine, he has said he will take the Baltics next. And that means that American servicemen and women will be potentially involved in that conflict. That's not a risk that I'm willing to take at this point. We also know that the world is watching. We know that Xi is watching. We know that that Putin has been in talks with Xi and with North Korea. So they are waiting and they are watching. And any sign of weakness from us is almost a green light to those guys. So again, peace through strength. We have to be that deterrent.
More of a longer-term immigration question. With the U.S. Birth rate declining, to stay competitive over the next decades with emerging economies, is it possible the GOP sooner than later may have the opinion that we need more immigration, and that's perhaps a middle ground across the aisle?
It's too late for that. When you have you had a all-time record this month of illegal crossings. Nobody's ready to talk about immigration reform or increasing quotas, not for a long time, not until the border is actually secured, and we see that for a number of years. That's where voters are at.
So just to verify, are you comfortable with the funding levels that the administration proposed, in addition to, you know, the portions you said about the border and Ukraine, that number you support?
Not necessarily. I mean, a large portion of the Ukraine aid is economic, humanitarian aid. As I said, that should really start being provided by European countries, other countries. Look, I mean, your Arab countries has a role in this too. None of them have done it. These rich oil countries. If the Ukraine economy falls, it does have massive effects throughout the world. Not necessarily in the United States, but throughout the developing world. This will affect all of these countries. They need to come together and help out. we can provide the exquisite weaponry necessary to actually change the stalemate. That should be our goal. So no, I don't. So there needs to be a lot of details fleshed out in the funding levels themselves. On the DHS funding levels, more details needed. They tend to go to the right places, but right now, the way their policies are, that would simply facilitate the current crisis. It would make it cleaner. It doesn't need to be cleaner, it needs to be stopped. And so you have to add the policy changes in addition to those funding mechanisms.
Why did the majority of the conference vote against the creation of a new IG, a coordinating IG, in that $300 million package?
The question was,
There was a special new inspector general in that training package of
Yeah.
$300 million to coordinate the work of the other IGs who are overseeing Ukraine aid. But a majority of the conference voted against that.
yeah, well, because there's a debate over whether that's necessary. There's already a lot of money and a lot of IG support for Ukraine. I help educate members a lot on this particular issue. You know, if the Ukrainians want an additional Javelin missile, for instance, they have an entire process where they have to take pictures of the spent rounds and get it back. It's very, very difficult for that stuff to go missing. Humanitarian aid's a little different. This is one reason I'm not so much for that, because it's very hard to track that and where that goes. So, but as far as IG support, there's some debate over whether it's necessary to add yet another layer when there's already quite a bit of IG oversight. That? Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.